My name is Monica Schmidt. I am a 10-year resident of Elm Grove and member of the Junior Guild, and I will be moderating tonight's forum. Thank you to everyone who made this evening possible. We're really happy to be back in person this year and to have 5 candidates running for trustee positions. Before we get started, I'll just go over what our format will be for this evening. We will not have any active audience participation. Questions were submitted from residents before tonight's forum. We had almost 50 questions submitted, and we narrowed them down into broad themes and reworded them into questions that the candidates will be answering. We'll start with an opening statement from each of the candidates, and then we'll move into the questions. Each candidate will have an opportunity to respond to the question in 2 minutes. And after each candidate has responded, if anybody has any additional comments or a response to what was said, they can speak for an additional 30 seconds. We do have timekeepers here tonight just to keep us on track and make sure that we're adhering to those 2-minute time limits. After the questions have been answered, the candidates will again have an opportunity to make closing remarks, which will also be limited to 2 minutes. The candidates are seated tonight in the order that they appear on your ballot. So hopefully that will help people remember who is speaking. They're seated in the order that they're on your ballot. We'll start with the opening statement, and the order that they're on your ballot is actually randomly selected. So by default, it's randomly selected how they're seated tonight. And then we again randomly selected how we're going to start with the opening remarks. We're going to start with John Schindler, who is seated in the 4th seat for the opening statement, and then we will move to the candidate to his left for the opening statements, and then the first question will be to the candidate on his left, Jim Koleski. So with that, John Schindler, do you want to start with your opening statement?
Sure. Thank you, Monica. Good evening. I'm John Schindler. I grew up in Elm Grove, and this is my home. After high school, I moved away for college and then traveled around the world for work and personal enrichment, but I always knew this is my home. After attending UW-Madison, I became a research hydrogeologist with the U.S. Geological Survey and traveled extensively doing environmental research involving lakes, streams, and groundwater. Later in life, I transitioned into emergency medicine, and I recently retired as a flight paramedic with Flight for Life. I'm currently working as a licensed realtor. Since I've returned and made Elm Grove my home, I've been fortunate to be part of and instrumental in upgrading our emergency medical service over the decades from EMT Basic to EMT Intermediate to full ALS paramedic. This upgrade in capabilities and equipment has, I believe, saved multiple lives over the years. Working with the Elm Grove Police Department, I started a tactical EMS program in response to the tragic incidents that have been occurring around the country, so we are better prepared should such an incident ever happen here. I am currently a member of the Board of Directors of the Elm Grove Community Foundation. I am president of the Elm Grove Citizens Police Academy Alumni Association. I serve on the Village Public Safety Committee and am a member of the Ad Hoc Pathway Committee. Taking care of the natural areas of the village is essential, and my wife, Jean, and I recently adopted the section of Underwood Creek that runs through the village park. We host twice yearly cleanups events with interested volunteers. I am running because I think my background and experience position me well to deal with the issues the village will face in the future. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Jim Koleski?
First, let me thank the Elm Grove Junior Guild for organizing this forum and Monica for moderating. My name is Jim Koleski. Margaret and I live at 940 Catherine Drive. We moved to Elm Grove over 11 years ago, relocating from Rochester, Minnesota. Like John, we moved around a little bit as we raised our family, lived in Massachusetts, Illinois, and Minnesota, and with a stint in Singapore in between. I graduated from University of Wisconsin-Whitewater and also did graduate work out east. We have enjoyed all that Elm Grove has to offer, including its beautiful park, the ability to ride our bikes throughout the neighborhoods, and the excellent services provided by the village staff and employees, especially the recycling center, which I give a call out to, that I visit often on the weekend. This village, the village feel and culture are important to us. Personally, I recently retired from Altosham, a manufacturer in Maumee Falls, as its chief financial officer after 11 rewarding years. During this time, I was responsible to develop short and long-range business plans with primary objective of growth. Growth in jobs in Wisconsin while managing all the finances and information technology team members. Included in my team's responsibility was working with leaders in the business, throughout the business, to develop budgets, define value-driven capital projects, and deliver monthly progress reports. I enjoyed working with the team to listen to various points of view, resolve internal conflict, and build consensus. The most important action was always explaining the why behind our decisions and earning support for that path forward. I'm confident that these skills can add value to the village.
Thank you. Jennifer Stuckert.
Hi, thank you. Thank you to the Junior Guild for arranging the trustee forum and Monica for your moderation. I would also like to thank all those who are attending and watching. One of the many things that makes Elm Grove special is the high level of civic involvement in our community. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jennifer Stuckert. I've been a resident for 35 years. My husband and I raised our 2 children here, and unfortunately both of them live out of state now, but our daughter, who's a physician, and her husband would love to get back to the Elm Grove area because they have so many special memories growing up here. I retired last year from a career in medical sales and sales management, and I'm very much looking forward to once again getting back to my community. I also have worked as a consultant in the health and wellness industry, which I think can prove valuable to the community as they look for opportunities to save money on one of their major expenses, which is health insurance. I am a past president of the Elm Grove Women's Club and the originator of the Elm Grove Women's Club Memorial Day Pancake Breakfast. On a state level, I've served on the Epilepsy Heart of Wisconsin Foundation Board. Additionally, through the years, I have served in numerous leadership positions in my children's schools. I am committed to Elm Grove. I am a critical thinker who feels comfortable questioning and challenging the status quo when it is appropriate to do so. I promise to listen to our residents as they will always come first, followed closely by our area businesses. I am someone who can be trusted. I will be collaborative in working with others on the board and will always strongly stand up for the residents of Elm Grove.
Thank you, Jennifer. Jim?
Thank you, Monica, and thank you to the Junior Guild for putting this on. My name is Jim Gage. I've been a person who grew up in Brookfield, Elm Grove all my life. I was fortunate enough to be hired as a police officer back in 1986. I've watched the village grow over the years and seen a lot of projects come down the pipe and be involved in a lot of those projects as a police officer and later on as a supervisor. Additionally, I moved into the village about 25 years ago. I joined the EMS department back in the days when it was not a paid-on-call service, but eventually it became paid-on-call, and I went out and became a paramedic and worked with John for a good portion of our careers together. For 18 years I was on the paramedic force. And as a police chief, when I eventually was promoted to police chief in 2005, I spent the last 17 years working as a staff adjunct to the Public Safety Committee and also for the Police and Fire Commission. Additionally, I did 17 budgets where I was involved in planning for the operations and the capital budgets for both the police department, dispatch center, and also the municipal court system. My vision for the village is to maintain our autonomy and to move forward in the future where we can be self-sustaining. And we have some challenges with that in our finances, so we'll get into that as the night progresses. But thank you for being here.
Certainly, thank you. Patrick?
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank the Junior Guild for putting this on and Monica for moderating. It's really a fantastic event to have all of us come out here and share our ideas. I'd like to thank the audience. I'd like to thank everybody at home. And I'd also like to thank my fellow running mates here. It's really great that you're all willing to give this public service and give your opportunity, your time for this great opportunity. I know we all love this place the same. I'd also like to thank my beautiful fiance, Mariana, and my 3 wonderful children, Zach, Megan, and Mason, who all love going to Tonawanda. They are all red right now, so it's perfect. I've been a resident of Elm Grove here for 18 years. I grew up in Cedarburg, and I went to college at the University of Wisconsin-Madison on a scholarship. And it was a scholarship that was through the Western Golf Association. It was based off of financial need, caddy ability, and academics. And from that very moment when I received that scholarship, I knew I needed to always give back my entire life. And so I've always spent my time giving back to different people, different communities in the best way I know how. And I've been lucky to be a trustee here in Elm Grove for the last 8 years. This is my 5th election. I've been on pretty much every committee there is, from finance to rec to admin to safety. And I currently have chaired the Public Works Committee for the last 8 years, but I've been on it for 12 years. I professionally work at Grafe. I'm a vice president, backgrounds in landscape architecture, master planning. I've led some of the most major engineering projects in southeastern Wisconsin and really enjoy helping to make our community better. And I really wasn't sure if I should run again. You know, I have 3 little children with lots of time commitments, and I decided to give it one more chance here, or give it another chance, because I'm here to serve all of you. I really believe in listening, working with everybody, because I know we all want to keep the Norman Rockwell charm of our community, the pathways, the bikeways, the parks, the downtown, the trees, the great nature that we all have. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. We will now get into the question portion of this evening. As a reminder, you have 2 minutes to respond to the question. And then after everybody has responded, if you have any additional comments, you may make them in 30 seconds. Our first question is rather open-ended. You may have covered some of this in your opening remarks, but I think it might be worth repeating for everybody in the room and listening. We'll start with the candidate to John Schindler's left. So Jim Koleski will start with this question. Please describe what motivated you to run for a village trustee position. Why do you believe you will be an effective trustee? And what do you expect the time commitment to be for this volunteer position?
Okay. Why am I running for village trustee? Well, after guiding Altosham through the unprecedented impacts of COVID the past 2 years, where revenue, the top line of a business, was expected to drop over 40%, I retired in 2022. That was enough work and enough effort and enough sweat to make budgets balanced to last a lifetime. This has increased my available time to devote to giving back to local businesses and hopefully the village of Elm Grove. I have formed my own consulting business as a side job, as a side gig to give back to small businesses within southeastern Wisconsin. In addition, I've served for the last 4 years on the building board here in Elm Grove. And with meetings every 2 weeks, that has been a rather significant time commitment while working full time, but that was important enough to me to make that time available. In addition, why I'm running is I participated in sharing community concerns surrounding the Mandel project. I did not feel our elected village board was actively listening and acting on input received from residents. As I attended meetings, there were many people that shared their views and opinions, and the response was to bring up the next person to share their concerns. There really wasn't any feedback or engagement, and once the feedback was completed, the trustees had their closing statements. By running, I want my neighbors and fellow residents to have a choice and let them know their voice matters. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm running for a village trustee simply because I love Elm Grove. Currently, our village is at a crossroads. The decisions that are made regarding development, finances, taxes, and growth planning will have long-term implications for our residents and businesses. I believe that change and development is essential to keep our community vibrant. However, any changes must have broad support from the residents and businesses. These changes need to enhance our unique character in Elm Grove, and they need to be scaled to fit the property in the neighborhood. Development decisions have long-term implications in terms of finances and taxes, traffic, school boundaries, and emergency services. I have spent the last 20 years in medical sales and sales management. As a sales management, I was responsible for hiring, balancing a budget, motivating my team, and rewarding performance and encouraging teamwork. I also spent 7 years in the wellness industry, of which 4 years were spent commuting to New York State. I consulted there with Excellus Blue Cross Blue Shield of New York. I worked in the wellness and health industry, and in that capacity, I worked with insurance brokers, unions, and large employers, including municipalities. Additionally, I have worked with various Native American tribes throughout the Midwest. On a volunteer basis, I'm a past president of the Elm Grove Women's Club, originator of the Pancake Breakfast, and have held other leadership positions. I'm anxious to get back into the community and to volunteer. Being recently retired, I do have the time, I have the motivation, I have the desire to make this a place where we not only feel comfortable and we're excited, but it's a place for our children and generations to come.
Thank you. Jim?
Thank you. My motivation, again, like I had mentioned earlier, I grew up here. I've been involved in this village really my entire adult life. The last 17 years as a department head, as police chief, I've been deeply involved in the budget and trying to make ends meet. I mean, we're at a point with finance right now where we're cutting paper clips and we're trying to narrow down what we spend money on so we don't have to cut personnel and cut services. And it's become a real challenge, and that's what motivated me to continue my public service. I retired from law enforcement in January. Didn't really waste too much time to get involved in this, but I enjoy it, and I really care about trying to make these financial decisions that are difficult. And we're in a position where we do have to look at how we're going to proceed to maintain our autonomy as a village and how we're going to continue to sustain the types of services that we have, and try to do it on a budget that's really becoming very difficult with our tax levy caps. So these are going to be some significant challenges. There are going to be situations where we have to take some developments that come down the pipe seriously. I've seen past developments over the years like that we don't question today. We have sidewalks and streetlights, but I'm telling you, there was a huge fight about putting in sidewalks and traffic control signals. Nobody wanted to get rid of the stop signs. And Park and Shop hasn't changed for a long time. I mean, I think, Captain Kangaroo was still on the air since the last time anything happened there. So we have to look at some of these things and try to figure out something that's thoughtful to keep our village sustained and keep our charm. Thank you.
I'm running because, again, I believe in community service, and I feel that my background as a senior partner at a local architecture, engineering, planning firm gives me a unique skill set, specifically because many communities hire me to help them fix their downtowns. I've been hired by Grafton, Cedarburg, Whitefish Bay, Glendale, Milwaukee, Madison, to help them fix their downtowns, to add development, to modify streetscapes, to change how those downtown places operate. One of the projects that I led was Drexeltown Square in Oak Creek, which was a place where Oak Creek wanted a downtown where they didn't have one. And I was key to working with the community, the developer, and the residents to kind of find that sweet spot where we're trying to add development as well as public services, community, civic obligations. But it's not just an engineering solution, a planning solution, engineering, it's financial and it's real estate, and all these things come together. And you need to be able to look at these through a wide lens. And so I feel that my expertise at doing this is really uniquely qualifies me to continue on. I've already done this for 8 years and been on Public Works for 12. We've accomplished a lot of great things in those 12 years on Public Works, from the Juno pathway to Watertown Plank to the bridges at Watertown Plank, to the splash pad, the sledding hill improvements, the cute little Elm Grove signs with the little logo. Those were something that we added, but, maintaining up the drive garbage service. There's a lot of really not super exciting things that we as a village need to maintain, but those are the things that we try to really focus on. And we have a lot to come. We have another bridge that needs to get replaced. We have a lot of roadways that are deteriorating faster than we can pay for them. More pathways we want to do. We need to daylight the creek under DNR order. So there's a lot of challenges coming up, and I feel someone with my background in planning, engineering, and my last 12 years here helping the village makes me uniquely qualified.
Thank you. John Schindler?
Yeah, I don't want to completely rehash what I said in my opening remarks. I just want to say that this is my home. I intend to be here for the rest of my life. I've been coming to the meetings here for over 4 years regularly to get a good understanding of what happens in the trustee meetings and the subcommittee meetings. You cannot be a single issue trustee. What people find out is how mundane most of the work is. There's a lot of work that goes into it behind the scenes. It's not just the big issues where everybody shows up. I waited till I retired so I would have enough time to tackle this. A couple other things about my background. I'm the past president of the Wisconsin EMS Association. It's the largest EMS association in the country with over 7,600 members. We put out a monthly magazine, but the important thing is the connections that I developed doing that. I'm also part of the Legacy Pathway Group. We're trying to get more pathways, and they've been way too slow getting them in. We had a safety study that was done in 1989, and a survey of the residents. Everybody was in favor of pathways. Not everywhere, just along the major arterials. Again, in 2011, another study was done, said we need the pathways. Really, nothing has been happening. So I approached Marquette University and got a group of students in the engineering department to design an innovative pathway as their capstone project of their senior year. They'll be presenting to the Public Works Department soon. And I'm just saying that kind of shows I'm looking for innovative ways to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Approximately 20% of our questions that were submitted related to budgeting. So we will go there next. Wisconsin municipalities have operated under budgetary levy limits since 2006. A municipality is only allowed to increase its levy over the amount it levied in the prior year by the percentage increase in equalized value from net new construction. In the village of Elm Grove, the annual levy limit increase remains relatively low on an annual basis as the village is built out. Given this tax reality and the reality that labor and material costs are increasing, how will you address potential budget gaps? What, if any, role do you see the downtown development and master planning having? Jennifer, we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you. Elm Grove's budget is tight, and our trustees have worked very hard to maintain a high level of services to our residents in a very challenging environment. And thank you for those that are on the board that really were a part of that. Certainly it is a challenge. We've got a tax levy that's set by the village and it's limited by the state. Net new construction increases the tax levy and gives the village the ability to raise taxes. Right now, I am concerned because I think that one of the motivations with the large development that we have just recently approved is that it is going to give the village the ability to increase the tax levy and increase all of our taxes. I believe that there are other ways to bring in water, bring in tax money. I think the village has done a very good job in looking for some of these resources. They recently moved and created a new transportation tax, which will help with our roadways. But I think that there are other opportunities for cost savings. One of the things that I would like to do in my role as trustee is really look at the village health insurance, how it's currently set up for village employees. I do have 7 years in that industry. I have a good background to really look into that and look for opportunities for savings. They do exist, and I consulted in this capacity in 7 years, so I hope to bring that as one area in which we can save some money.
Thank you. Jim Gage?
Thank you. As you indicated, the state puts a cap on us, and I think this last year going into 2022, the cap was right around 2%. Get in the numbers, you can check on your phones while we're talking here. The village budget increased 1.98%. That's what we did on the levy. Now, the sewer fund that we're talking about was $1,100,000. What they did is they split that in half, and they put $550,000 of it into a fee base. So you had 1.98 the budget increased, but your fees went up 33% for your sewer fees and everything else, okay? So you're still paying, but you're paying for it in a fee, and then you don't get to write it off because it's not part of the tax levy. So how do you deal with this, right? The way you deal with it, unfortunately, is you have to have some type of development. Our commercial area is underutilized. I know people don't like some of the development that's happened. I'm not a big fan of rentals, that's for certain. But it needs to be something that you look at. We had a good development coming forward with Reinders that would have brought water into the downtown 4 or 5 years ago. And it was people who were for development, but hey, not that development, that ended up kind of pushing that off, and we weren't able to take advantage of that. So our water kind of stopped back by Heritage. We never brought up water from the city of Brookfield. So now we're trying to bring in water from Wauwatosa, and that's become an issue as well because it was seen as being tied to the School Sisters of Notre Dame project. So the reality of it is that water project could have moved forward anyway, but we'll get into, I'm sure, talking about the referendum down the road here. But it had to be turned into the development of the School Sisters of Notre Dame and had them fund it because of what was going on with the injunction. And it ended up costing the developer or the TIF an extra $600,000 to $700,000. So I'm sure we'll get into the meat of that. But the numbers are that you really have some financial push here, crush, if you will. And we'll discuss that later.
Thank you, Jim. Patrick?
Thanks. Yeah, the village has been at a crossroads here for the last several years, more than they had in the past, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that 15 years ago we started using a Wisconsin DOT specification mix for roadway asphalt that was called spec mix, and this was supposed to be the new wonder gem, if you will, and was supposed to have 25-year life. And what had happened is those roads were starting to deteriorate within 12, 15 years, and has kind of changed how we looked at budgeting. Normally, we would spend $175,000 to $250,000 a year in repaving, and then we also had some money in a 5-year cap for pathways. And what we were trying to do was just try and keep up. But as the roads started to fail much quicker and quicker, the problem is starting to become really large. And the Public Works Committee put together a 20-year plan now for the next 20 years of all the roads that we need to replace. And we're really we don't have enough money to cover it. And we really have only a couple choices. We can keep cutting services. If you want to see some really exciting meetings, you can sit and watch the Finance Committee where we talk about not what we add, but what we get rid of. Chief and the other department heads do a great job of being very frugal, and we need them to be because we need dollars for everything else. And your other choice is to increase taxes through a referendum, which nobody's ever wanted to do. And the third is to add revenue. And that's kind of what we've been trying to do here with bringing water to the downtown. The Mandel project will have its own, its own type of project, but what Water to Downtown will do will help us reinvent downtown. And it will help us garner those additional dollars because these properties will now have water and they will be assessed as having water. And that's what we really need. And the reason you need the water is because none of the buildings can be redeveloped without having adequate fire protection. They're all grandfathered in. They can't be touched without adequate water. So that's what we were trying to do through Public Works and the trustees.
Thank you. John?
I agree that we have a real budget problem. Since 2005, when the state issued the tax levy, it's bounced around between like 1.5% to 2% that we could not raise our taxes. Now think about that. Your health insurance goes up every year. The cost for fuel goes up. The cost for parts for all our DPW equipment, everything goes up. more than 2%. Prior to running, I met with every department head in the village to find out where things could be cut, what they needed. And we run a pretty lean ship here. There isn't really much to cut, so we do have to generate revenue. With the Mandel project, everyone said, well, your taxes won't go up. That's not really true. That's the point of having a TIF. Your taxes will go up because the total tax amount, taxable property amount in the village is $1,200,000,000 and change. The Mandel property is about 98 million. That will add about 8% of taxable property to the rolls. Now what that means is the village will have some cushion to raise the taxes on everybody else so we can pay for the ongoing things we need. So we will pay more in taxes prior to the 20 years when we start getting money into the general coffers from Mandel when the TID closes. We also need to develop the downtown. Bringing water is essential. When we remodel these buildings, we'll get a lot more tax revenue from them. I just don't want to see a generic looking downtown. I think we have to get good control of that. And but getting these buildings redeveloped will get us the revenue we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Koleski.
As a certified public accountant, I've spent my professional career and personal life with experience on building and managing a budget for companies ranging in size from billions of dollars to small businesses. As always, the key to building a successful budget is strong leadership and with well-defined short and long-term priorities and objectives. Unfortunately, many times there is not sufficient budget dollars to fund all the requests from the leaders in the business. Next steps to managing the budget, just like in personal finances, additional sources of revenue must be identified and a critical review of need-based spending decisions are required with not all requests approved. One opportunity or activity that I have employed and am a supporter of is zero-based budgets, where each year spending must be justified from dollar one, not just assuming all prior spending is a baseline and the new year request is about how much budget will increase. This discipline leads to available revenue being dedicated to the most important and critical areas. Also, during the village board meeting in December, the review was reviewed with the village today. The trustees discussed one such revenue-raising decision where $550,000 of additional revenue was raised for the village by moving sewer charges to a new line on our property taxes, freeing up an additional funds to support the village. We all shared in about a $180 increase in property taxes as a result. The additional discretionary budget dollars, as Trustee Kressin has mentioned, is earmarked for 2022 road improvements. However, these are discretionary funds that can be used in other areas. Also, as mentioned, there is the potential to go out for referendum if we are truly in a binding situation to request a tax levy increase above the state mandate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I get my 30 seconds?
Yes, if anybody has any comments or responses to what was said, you have 30 seconds to do so.
I just wanted to add to it when I was talking about the costs involved. Healthcare was brought up as part of the response. Over the years, we've looked at the budget for employee healthcare, and we were typically looking at like 14 to 20% increases over the last several years. We got a gift this year. I think it came in at like 3.5%. So it was 3.5%. And I mean, I was like, good. You know, a person who has to manage, the expenses in the police department, that was a huge, huge thing. So, we're glad to get that.
Thank you.
Okay.
30 seconds, yep.
Yep, thanks. One thing I wanted to add was, we're also limited not just on the equalized value differential, but there's also percentage limits of our tax increases that we can have a year. And that's really where the limitation really would hit in. So even with the TIF coming on board, it's not like we pay some extra percent. The taxes aren't going up 10%. It's not even possible. So, to say that the Mandel project's going to add 10% to people's taxes just isn't true. It's just not possible. But adding that water to downtown will help raise that revenue so that we can keep that levy where it is.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't saying that 8% was the amount our taxes would go up immediately. That's just as the property is developed and the taxable amount increases, that's the amount that the tax could be raised. Not all at once, but it could over the length of time. Thank you.
And specifically, as I ran out of time, I mean, different opportunities include looking at captive insurance pools for health insurance and other insurance needs that I've implemented in prior organizations, as well as earning revenue from use of credit cards and other activities to generate side revenue that basically just recoup money based upon our expenditures today. So there are many different avenues to pursue and think about, and I have the opportunity to share those ideas with the village trust, with the village employees.
Thank you. Jennifer, do you have a response?
I'm fine. Thank you.
You're good, okay. So moving on to our third question. In the submitted questions, there were several that were about tax incremental districts, TIDs, and tax incremental financing, TIFs. What do you consider to be an appropriate use of tax incremental financing? What is your position on the tax incremental financing request for the redevelopment of the School Sisters of Notre Dame property and the recent approval by the Village Board of Trustees to enter into a development agreement? We'll start with Jim Gage.
Yeah, the School Sisters of Notre Dame project is a lot more complicated than I think people think it is. When you get back into the back of that complex, there's a number of different buildings back there that are going to end up being raised, and it's going to be a significant expense to try and keep the historic buildings as a part of the requirement from School Sisters of Notre Dame used as a part of the project. You still have a little bit of what you would call, I guess, sellers' property rights to be able to determine who they want to sell to and what they want to maintain within the property as they sell it, as long as they're within the framework of the zoning and the regulations within the village. So when this project comes forward and you have all these additional expenses to take care of demolition of the building and who knows what they're going to run into when they start digging, you know, that there's a considerable amount of cost involved. And that's where the TIF districts come in, because these buildings are older, and that's where the blight concerns come in, where they have to tear them down, and there's a lot of cost involved in that. So that's where the TID gets identified and the TIF financing starts to kick in. So when you look at that project, you know, Notre Dame hasn't been paying taxes on that property at all except for a small portion. And everything that happens from that day forth when they start on a project is an increase in the value that helps increase the taxability for that property. So that's basically why I'm in favor of the TIF. I was at the outset, and I think it's going to be a good project in the long term, although I understand people are upset by some of the numbers and the fact that you have rental groups coming in there as well. But overall, it's a great developer. We've had good information from Ellers, which is our person that looks at that. So
Thank you, Jim. Patrick.
Mhm.
Yep, thanks. So there's a demand for people to move to Elm Grove, right? We live here, we love it. Other people want to live here and love it just like that. And we had a really large study done, a housing demand study done with the downtown master plan, and showing that there was a desirability for more people to have and more housing types within the village. And you know, that's why this downtown master plan was critical to our success, because what we could have done is set the stage for what we wanted on different sites, so we don't have to have these drag out arguments on every parcel. And that's something I hope we can get back to, because that would really help really protect the village for the years to come. You know, this project, it started as a much larger project, well over 400 units. We got it down to 230 and change, and we kept the high value where it is. So I think from the village trustee position, we really worked hard to maintain that value, maintain the high quality, and really that was our job. And we also protected the village from a financial future by developing most of the TIF is all under a pay-go, as well as other bond type issues that are only paid if there's value created. The Mandel Group personally guaranteed the value. That protects the village. If they don't produce the value, they pay the village back. I mean, this isn't coming, we're not writing a check for anybody. There's no check being written here. This is something that is used to help downtowns that have problems. We have 2 historic buildings we'd like to keep. None of the other developers that proposed on it would keep them. That's super important to the village. We also get water to the downtown, super important to the village. The parking goes underground, so we don't have to look at it. We don't have the heat island effect. We don't have the additional stormwater. We don't ruin habitat. We don't have cars parked next to cemeteries. A lot of really positive things for that project, and it's a really high quality project. And for us, the way I looked at it is this is what we use on these projects I work on. You know, to do the first project to make all the other projects go forward, because you need somebody to go over the wall first. This is the first one over the wall. This gets us the water and allows us to really protect downtown.
Thank you. John Schindler?
Yeah, I think the tip that's on everybody's mind is, of course, the school sisters. I believe that is still too dense. I believe there's too many houses on Red Barn. And we've been repeatedly told that more density means less TIF. So I found it interesting when Barry Mandel was recently quoted. They were trying to build a tower on Prospect Avenue, a 24-story apartment tower, and the city denied him any TIF funding. He said, due to the reluctance of the city to provide financial support, we are also exploring a mid-range instead of a high-rise to reduce the cost of construction without diminishing the quality of the apartment building. So without a TIF, they built a smaller apartment. Now, if we look at what they're getting the money for, I fully support using a TIF to bring in water to the village. I fully support the castle restoration. And those buildings back there can be considered blight. They're old, nobody can use them. But if we give them everything they want, they say they'll get a minimum of 12%. If we give them the $23 million. If we give them nothing, they'll get 10% internal rate of return to the investors. Now, I'd like to see that money go to us, not leave the village. I'd like to see the money for TIF loans put to work here and not go to pad the pockets of private investors. What we should have done is told Mandel, this is what we'll pay for. Now you design a project that fits. So TIFs are not a silver bullet. They don't work everywhere. Prior to 1975, there were no TIFs. Somehow, big developments still got built. Mayfair, Brookfield Square, without any TIF money. Now every developer with anything larger than a single-family home comes with his hand out. I'm seriously thinking about, jokingly thinking about, approaching the village and asking for a TIF for a sunroom for my house. So in closing, it's not the function of village government to prop up the returns for private.
We're going to move on, John.
Pardon?
Your time's up, so we're going to move on. Jim Koleski?
Thank you. The development agreement surrounding the Sisters of Notre Dame site is too large for the Elm Grove for this location. In addition, the proposed lot sizes for the single-family homes are approximately 1/2 acre. Building $1 million homes on a ½ acre is not consistent with existing Elm Grove properties in the area. Additionally, I'm visualizing the impact of traffic from the development with only one access point. What will happen as future residents of 240 plus apartments try to access Watertown Plank Road? I do not see an ability to turn west given the current traffic, especially during morning trains. I'm also concerned that additional police, fire, EMS, and other services will be required to support the additional apartments and associated single-family residents with no additional revenue other than sanitary sewer and trash collection fees available until projected 2042. That's right, 20 years in the future. All the property taxes collected from the new development will be applied to the TIF until paid off. All residents outside the TIF will be required to subsidize these additional costs, or the existing high-quality services currently provided will be impaired. As it relates to the $23.3 million in TIF financing for the project, this is an extremely high number. The trustees on Monday made the case that this is the minimum required to allow Mandel to achieve a 12% return, as John mentioned. I challenge this conclusion. Why does Mandel get to earn over $10 million a year in cash return on their investment, and Elm Grove foots the bill? In this real estate market, the highest it's been in the history of the United States, why should Elm Grove agree to a 12% return? Of all the assumptions discussed, not once was the 12% or the $10 million annual cash flow challenged. Also, what is Mendel paying for the property? This should also be challenged. Finally, why is the municipal water bundled into this project? Water should be considered separate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer.
Okay, thank you. Recently, the village agreed to a $23 million TIF in order to fund new construction, the Mandel Sisters project. $23 million in public subsidies. If you think about it, that's 3 times Elm Grove's annual budget. This is a staggering amount. For the next 18 to 20 years, all new property taxes on this complex will go back to paying off the debt. None of the new taxes will support village operations, schools, or emergency services. These expenditures will have to be picked up by those outside the TIT, thus you and I will be paying those. Additionally, the new construction will figure into the tax levy rate, allowing the village to increase your taxes. You will not see any benefit when the TID is closed, and then only will your taxes go down. Elm Grove residents will pay increased taxes for 20 years through higher tax rates, while the developer's taxes only go to pay off the money Elm Grove gave them. Most alarming, though, is the race to push this TIF through. The Board of Trustees actually moved the public portion, the municipal water, from the village's column to the developers. This move was truly a shell game to circumvent the referendum vote, in which the residents would have a say in any public work projects over $1 million. This move actually cost the village an additional $650,000. The TIF vote could have waited 8 days. I believe that not waiting was fiscally irresponsible.
Thank you. Does anyone have a response? Patrick?
So one thing I will say is you will see benefits year 2 as soon as the water goes in. All the other projects that get water get reassessed with having water, which is a much different thing than they have today. Also, of the $23 million, the village share of that is really only 34%. When you pay your taxes, it goes to the school district, it goes to the Waukesha County, it goes to technical school. All of those other people have also reviewed this TIF plan and said this is a good deal for us. We've looked at very many different people, and they've all given back and said this is a good deal for the village, from attorneys to other communities.
Thank you. Jim Koleski?
Yeah, just concluding my comments, I ran out of time. Finally, why is the water bundled in this project? Water should be considered separately, let alone the shenanigans or workarounds that were employed by the trustees, which increased the TIF financing by $650,000. Postponing when incremental tax dollars can be made available to the village to fund its budget. So in essence, that workaround cost all of us a delay in when that money would be available. Thank you.
Thank you. John Schindler, did you have a response?
Yes, just wanted to say I do support the TIF for the things I indicated, the castle, the water, tearing down the buildings, but I don't believe it. What I don't like is the 9.8 million MRO that's going for the investors. I don't believe it's the role of village government to artificially prop up the sale of private property, and I don't believe it's the role of village government to artificially pad the investment returns of private investors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jen?
Just wanted to comment briefly on the referendum. There's been mention that the referendum wasn't brought forward in an attempt to kill the School Sisters of Notre Dame project. I think it's exactly why it was brought forward. It was a tactic. And if it does pass, I'm concerned about the fact that there's a number of different projects that are coming down the pipe that it's going to affect. And we're going to look at one in Gebhardt Roadway project for certain, that if it does pass, we're going to have to go to referendum in November, and then we're going to have to rebid the project probably after the first of the year, and it was supposed to be done this year. So,
Jennifer?
I'd just like to comment. I was going to comment on something else, but referendums get passed every day. Having a referendum where 99% of all village expenditures go through no problem at all, and you've got about 1% that are over $1 million, and so you're voting on them, is really just good fiscal responsibility. Referendums passed. We have a smart electorate here. Let's give them credit. They're going to vote for the things that are important to each one of us in the village.
Thank you. Our next question is about the referendum. Elm Grove residents will be voting on a public works capital expenditure referendum on Tuesday. I'm going to read the entire referendum as everybody listening or here today might not have it memorized. Do you approve the adoption of an Elm Grove ordinance requiring that prior to the letting of any project for a public works project financed in whole or in part, which requires a village capital expenditure of $1 million or more, that the village board shall submit to the electorate a binding referendum for the approval of the project. Disapproval of such binding referendum shall preclude the village from proceeding with the project. The wording of any binding referendum shall include a concise summary providing the electors with the information regarding the specific purpose of the public works project, the location of the public works project, the total cost of the project, and the method to be used by the village for payment of the public works project expenditures. Nothing in the provision shall be construed to preclude the village from exercising its role in the planning or design of such publicly financed projects. Do you plan to vote yes or no? Please explain why. Patrick, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Well, I will tell you when the signatures came in and we started talking about it as a board, I agreed that we should have an
I'm
ordinance
sorry,
on.
can you answer, are you
Oh,
planning yes or no?
I was going to get to that.
And, well, just so everyone's clear.
I plan on
yes or
voting no.
Yes or no, and then explain why.
Yeah, I plan on voting no. I really believe in the fiscal responsibility, and that's why I've been working so hard over the years here for the village. But I just thought the dollar amount was too low. We have multiple projects coming down the pike, as Chief said here, from Gebhardt Road and Pathway to Marcella Bridge to the daylighting of the creek. And I just see this as not really a great use. It's just a little bit too low. So that's why the village board passed the $5 million limit, which gave us the ability for those bigger projects, the storm sewer project or the floodplain project, or more water projects as a threshold. Also, the problem with the ordinance, we found out is it's not an exception outside of during the injunction period for the village to take care of any emergency things. So if there was some massive project at the village hall or a bridge, the judge said that during the injunction we have the ability for emergencies, but the way the ordinance is written, there isn't anything in there. And just honestly, I'm in construction and design, and the challenge with this is that we have to wait to April to put projects out to bid. All that road work is actually let the previous November, December, and January. So you're either going to have to pay inflated costs, or we're going to have to push projects out to future years. And the thing I really don't like about this is it doesn't bring us together. I mean, now you're going to have certain segments of the population, pushing one project over another, and people are like, hey, let's just throw out 8 projects. Well, I don't know that that's a great solution either. So for those reasons, I'm going to vote no.
Thank you. John,
From the beginning, I've said that.
can you start with how you're going to vote?
That's what I'm going to say.
Okay, thank you.
From the beginning, I've said that with reservations, I'm going to vote yes. Now, the reason, I just want to say this entire issue from the beginning, there's been more heat than light. There's been a lot of personal attacks. There's been a lot of half-truths. And I think that has to stop. You should just defend your argument on its merits. So I did not originally sign the petition. I think direct legislation is an unwieldy tool. But I was surprised at the action the board took when it was brought to the village clerk. I knew immediately it violated the spirit of the law, so I started digging into it. What I found, very easy to find, is it states clearly a common council has no authority to make an initial judgment of the constitutionality or validity of proposed direct legislation. So I did not attend law school, but I did go to civics class in 10th grade. And they taught us that an ex post facto change of the law is unconstitutional. Once you bring a permit, a building permit or a petition down to the village and you hand it to a government official, your rights are frozen. The village board can't meet a few days or a week later and retroactively make what you have submitted illegal. What began to tip me towards the yes side was the fact that it took a year and an injunction for the board to follow this law. There is an emergency clause at 62.15 in state law that if there's an emergency like a bridge collapse, this law does not apply. Just like trustees have a 2-year term, this law can be repealed or amended in 2 years. So, and we budget for things 5 to 10 years out. So for those reasons, I'm voting yes.
Thank you. Jim?
I'll start with my last sentence and go from there. I will be voting yes on the referendum. And, you know, this is a broad issue. We've talked to a community out west that has lived within this referendum of $1 million and it has functioned successfully. And that community has an annual budget of over $15 million where we're at $7 million. So there's other examples where this has worked effectively. As a business leader, I strongly believe in a system of internal controls and checks and balances. What I mean by that is there are limits on the authority of any one group or individual that limits their ability to commit to a transaction or project. This is what this referendum is about to me, putting a check in place for commitments over $1 million. This does not include emergency projects, as John discussed. This is a best practice in business today. This is normal, and it works well in, like I said, in our neighboring community. In addition, these public works projects are known years in advance and funded over 5 years in the annual budget. If a project is $1 million, $200,000 is set aside each year prior to commencing the project. With this time frame in mind, there are multiple elections to put approval of the project on a referendum ballot well in advance of the project's binding and commencement. I have talked to many residents over the last 2.5 weeks, knocked on over 800 doors. This has been a great topic and a debate that I've had with residents. And clearly the $1 million limit is what has brought forward discussion. And as I've said, you know, these projects are known well in advance. And so, again, we know what's coming. We should be able to put referendums together that are meaningful and with good estimates based upon budgetary design reviews. Thank you.
I am a vote yes. 800 residents from nearly every neighborhood in Elm Grove signed the petition requesting any public work expenditures over $1 million go to referendum for voter approval. This was done in the middle of COVID, so I believe this referendum has broad public support. Public works projects over $1 million are rare. There have been 2 public works projects in the last decade that were over $1 million, the splash pad and the work on Watertown Plank in 2019. Some might also include the HVAC system in the Village Hall buildings. However, I don't believe that was addressed in the Public Works Committee, so I'm not sure if that really would fall in then. So maybe it's 3 at the most. Delafield, as Jim mentioned, a similar sized community, has a similar ordinance and has successfully been operating under it for years. We do 5-year planning, again, with Jim and John both talked about, and so it is easy to plan in advance for this. We hold elections 4 times a year. Many ask, what about an emergency? Again, Wisconsin Statute 62.15 provides for emergencies. I know many are concerned about the pathways and how that would affect them. Only one of the current proposed pathways on a standalone basis is over $1 million. In regard to municipal water, we have a smart electric, and I believe that they want to keep a vibrant community and understands the importance of municipal water in downtown to support and keep our current businesses and attract new businesses as well. Referendums are approved every day. Just because something goes to referendum does not mean that it is dead on arrival. Bottom line, this is smart governance. 99% of all expenditures will never need a referendum. This allows the 1% that do to have broad community support.
Jim?
I'll vote no.
Okay.
Back in a prior life, we used to look at disputes and go, who's the primary physical aggressor? And in this case, I kind of look at the situation with the referendum and say that if the referendum was brought forth because there were other public works projects in the past that the village did a poor job on, that it caused our village rating and of financing to go down from our AA1 rating I would say, yeah, there's been some pretty bad choices in the past, and we need to have some type of a stopgap that the public can look at some of these projects. That's not the case here. This came out because people didn't like the details surrounding the school sisters of Notre Dame. And then here comes the direct legislation. Right or wrong or indifferent, the village did what they did. So now you've got two competing factions that are involved in this. But the basic thing that I look at is it really something that is needed when we look at future projects? We've got Gebhardt Road with resurfacing and bringing down the hill and doing the pathway. If that gets pushed out to a referendum vote in November, we're going to have to put it out to bid again after the first of the year. We all know petroleum prices go up, and that's what we use to make roads. So again, this type of situation that we would have had a project done this year now gets pushed out, and it's going to happen with other projects too. Trustee Kressin mentioned the Marcella Bridge. We don't have any funding that I know of that's coming from the federal or state level. That's going to be in the millions. So that's going to have to go to some type of resolution too, or referendum. And if you don't drive over that bridge and you live on the other side of town, how likely are you going to go in there and vote that you want to raise your taxes to build a bridge you don't even see or know about? So you're going to have campaigns just to deal with the referendum issues. So my time is up.
Yeah. Does anyone have a response, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the Delafield example, they do use it. They don't have a very high success rate of approvals, which is why we were trying to not go that route. I would ask yourself, to Chief's point, what happens if the Marcella Bridge does not pass if a referendum went through, or Gebhardt Road? What does the village do? Do we break it into three pieces? Well, that's easy on a road. What do you do with the bridge? Close it? And to the point of the emergency, the village attorney disagreed with that. So,
does anyone else have a response?
Yeah, just as far as pathways, I keep hearing those thrown in with that they won't be built if this referendum goes through. There's only one pathway that's over $1 million, and pathways aren't always built the same time a road is done. We can build the pathways regardless of what the referendum is.
Okay. Any other response?
I was just going to comment on the Marcella Bridge. I kind of look back in notes to see really when this became an issue. They've been talking about that bridge since 2015, and when I spoke with Monica Hughes today, she said it's really even prior to that. It's been as far as she can remember. They did have a 5-year plan to replace it. In the meantime, they kind of did some Band-Aids and some repairs, and so now it doesn't qualify for federal funding. So I think that's really kind of a unique situation there, and something that will be able to be addressed.
Thank you. Any other responses to this question?
I'll jump in for 30 seconds.
Wait, I thought we only had one chance to respond.
No,
He was the last person.
I'm sorry.
I was first to talk, and
Yeah.
I guess going to be last.
Yes.
So, I lost my train of thought.
Oh.
What I was going to say during this. But I apologize, but I just lost my train of thought with the point I was going to make. So
I'd just like to make a comment. I think, camping on Jennifer's point, we have a very knowledgeable electorate here in Elm Grove. As I went around and talked to residents during this election cycle, everybody is well aware of the issues that we face and well aware of the options that are out there. So in my mind, to say that we're going to block something because it's going to not be in our best interest, I think is not in the spirit that I've heard or experienced in my 11 plus years in Elm Grove.
All right. Thank you.
it came back.
It came back. All
Yeah,
right.
I was just going to say that when we go into this, you save money by bundling. Okay, it'll sound like Flo from Progression here, but you save the money by bundling. So when you're looking at Gebhardt and lowering the road and doing some of these things with the pathways, you want to bundle it together, and sometimes that can be over $1 million because you got a cost savings in doing that. You might do more than one pathway at a time. Okay, so when you sign the contract, so you want to be able to have some leeway to be able to save some money. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
I think everyone has responded, so we will move on to the next question. Several residents expressed concern about little action regarding the proposals of public works projects like pedestrian pathways and municipal water. Do you think pathways and water should be a priority of the village trustees? What would you do to advance these issues? And we'll start with John Schindler.
I definitely believe both of those are a priority. We need Lake Michigan water. That would be our forever water. As a hydrogeologist, I can tell you wells are problematic, especially if we redevelop the downtown. You can't have high-capacity wells without causing problems in the aquifer. When I was in hydro, when I was working, we called it mining groundwater. It's not being recharged as fast as we're taking it out. So we definitely need water from Lake Michigan. And Milwaukee water is some of the best in the country. As far as pathways, it's been identified for many, many years that we need these. As I said earlier, there's the 2 studies that were done. The Marquette students that I have engaged did a survey. They sent out 100 surveys to the people living in the northwest quadrant of the village around Highland. We got 47 responses, 47% return. 92% of them said they definitely want a pathway. They can't avoid using Highland to get where they need to go. So I guess we're building all these nice amenities downtown, like a splash pad and all kinds of things for kids, but the people on that side of the village have no way for their kids to get here. I guess the parents can tell them, well, you can crawl across the railroad tracks, look out for the 26 trains a day that come by, or go up Highland and take your life in your hands. This isn't what the residents want. They want the pathways on the major arterials for the safety. We want people that be able to walk to downtown and to be able to walk home from the beer garden. It's a quality of life that people are looking for here. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Koleski.
Pathways, which by my definition are paved walkways along certain streets to promote safe walking and bike paths on major roads, are a good idea. The recent addition along Elm Grove Road between Watertown Plank and Juneau is a great addition. I actually think it's called the Storm Sewer Access Road, but we'll call it a pathway. I have for years voiced my concern of an impending accident with walkers on the current Elm Grove Road, as well as strollers and children on bikes going to the park. That was well done. I do not see pathways defined as sidewalks on all streets of Elm Grove. Related to municipal water, it's a hot topic in the people I've talked to. And I think village leaders truly need to share with residents the total costs and benefits to bring municipal water to their homes, including the individual hookup costs to be paid directly by residents to mutually understand the why for all Elm Grove, not just the downtown area. Given the importance that a reliable source of water is for all communities, I would be in favor of exploring municipal water, including its costs and benefits. With these facts and data transparently shared, openly discussed, and debated, we can work together to define a path forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer.
I too am in support of municipal water. It's essential for the development and the revitalization of our downtown. Our businesses need the water to thrive and grow, and our residents want a vibrant downtown with a variety of shops, restaurants, and bars to enjoy. We're a connected community, and having downtown businesses where we shop and meet is everyone's desire. We need municipal water for that to happen and to have a truly vibrant downtown. As far as pathways go, with the development of downtown is going to come more traffic. Thus, I support pathways on all major thoroughfares where it makes sense and public safety is at risk. Every parent needs to know that their children are safe as they walk and bike to school, the park, and to their friends' home. Of the proposed pathways, again, on a standalone basis, only one of them is over $1 million. I have heard it said from residents that if a pathway did come to referendum, only the residents on that side of town would approve it. I don't believe that. Residents in this community are either pro-pathways or they're against them, and the majority of our residents are pro-pathways.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah. Thank you. Between the two, I think if you were to prioritize, I think water is the most important. You have a limited budget, and it is something that is important to the downtown area. I can give you a little history on pathways that might be terrifying to pathway pro people. When we first talked about Juno Pathway, those design plans came out in 1985. So there were 3 different plans. Everybody disputed all of them. And then if the plan went in front of somebody's house, they hated it. And that's just the nature of these things. And finally, that path had some funding, and it got diverted for stormwater and different things that were pressuring us at the time with our budget. So we eventually had that path, and I swear, I started in '86. This stuff started in '85. I thought for sure I was going to retire as chief after 36 years, and there still wouldn't be a path. But it did come forward. And as a result of that, you know, looking at how long it took for that path, the Public Safety Committee got together, and I was part of that as a staff adjunct, to look at rankings for areas that are most important based on surveys that went out to the community. And that's how we have the path ranking that we have today, and that's how we've got it entered into the budget. But if I had to make a decision, there's paths that are important due to safety. Highland's definitely one of them. I'm not so sure I'm really in tune with Graymore, but I can consider it. But when you look at the water, I think water is the most important thing. And then if we aren't pushing up against other budgetary concerns, then we can definitely start checking off our list of the pathways, going with the most hazardous areas first, based on the Public Safety Committee's hard work.
Thank you. Patrick?
Yeah, in the last year or so, I've met with hundreds of people, and the 3 things that have come up are school sisters, water, and pathways, pretty much to 100% almost. And that kind of proved out with our downtown master plan questionnaire that we sent out. The 2 most requested things that residents wanted in Elm Grove downtown were more eating and drinking locations and more retail, over 80% for both. You don't get either of those unless we get some type of municipal water. Over the last, since I've been on the village board or even on Public Works, we've added extended water with Brookfield along Watertown Plank. We've extended it down Elm Grove Road. We put it down Wall Street. And now with this project, and that's all been Brookfield water, and now looking to tap into Wauwatosa has been great. The thing I will always say when I was being part of the Public Works, the people want to ask me, when can I get it? And we were working out plans. But also the key to us was we wanted to make sure that nobody had to do it. You didn't have to tap into it. If you wanted to, there was a way for you to do it. But we didn't want to make someone and put a burden on them. And with pathways, you know, since I've been on Public Works, you know, we've done pretty much all of the pathways, and I think, you know, they are challenging. There's a lot of people that don't like them in front of their house, but you know, I have 3 little kids and really think they're fantastic. We enjoy riding our bikes to the village park, and I will continue to support them. We added them to the 5-year cap a year ago so that we could always keep funding them.
Thank you. Does anyone have a response to that question?
I'd just add to it that, you know, usually when people see these projects and they're not in favor of them, once they've been around for a number of years, they actually see the value in it. Again, it goes back to the downtown reconstruction. It goes back to the flood mitigation plan. We actually had people against the flood mitigation plan because it was $15 million. It's a lot of money. Let's build a levee for like $600,000 or something and then figure out where the water goes. Here's a $15 million project. Everyone's out against it. And now the people that I've seen people who have been out against it that are out walking around in our new park and love it. So.
Thank you. Any other responses to that question? All right, we'll move on. Elm Grove's volunteer fire and EMS departments are aging and struggling to recruit new members. What do you see as the future for the volunteer fire and EMS departments? And how will the village fund emergency services if there are not enough volunteers? What ideas or plans do you have? And we'll start with Jim Koleski again.
Second round. You know, I think as Jim has mentioned before, maintaining the autonomy of Elm Grove is important. And with that comes a commitment to EMT fire staffing and making sure their capabilities are up to are world class. The safety and ability to respond to emergencies of our residents is a primary objective of our village. The current residents that volunteer and commit their time providing an EMT and fire services will be changing over time as the current roster is no longer able to perform services. Additionally, money may need to be budgeted to sustain the high quality of service provided today. With other budget constraints already highlighted, this may not be an easy task. However, public safety is a primary objective. I know a lot of creative team members look for ways to raise funds to support public safety and other needs in Elm Grove, including the Junior Guild, the Elm Grove Foundation, Elm Grove Women's Club, and similar groups may need to be tapped to fund or maybe support public safety and the needs of our community.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Sure. Our fire and EMT volunteers are aging, and recruiting is really a challenge. I've talked to a number of people, and it really sounds like we just have several core people that are really taking most of the call right now. And talking to John, it sounds like the training requirements are just increasing every day, and that it's very, very difficult as a result to get volunteers. And it certainly is something that now is on the radar screen of the village. I know that recently they've asked the Administration and Personnel Committee to really define the problem and start looking into possible solutions. We do have a little bit of a Band-Aid right now. The 2 rooms that they've turned into sleeping rooms will really allow them to bring in volunteers from a little bit further away. In the past, you had to be about 15 minutes out, and with those sleeping rooms, they've actually already identified 2 people, and they haven't even started recruiting, so that certainly should help. But again, it's not going to solve the problem entirely. It is something that's going to require more investigation, looking into possibly working with another municipality. Sometimes there are smaller municipalities that are pulling together and as a group. And then there's also looking at the ability of having a public service officer, someone who would be trained in a variety of roles. And then last and not the least would be putting it on a referendum to increase taxes to pay for these services. I think that we have a high quality of service right now, and everyone has come to expect that. But it's something that in the future is really going to be quite a challenge to maintain. And so it's something that I would be happy to serve on a committee and be involved with.
Thank you. Jim Gage?
Thank you. Yeah, about 8 years ago or so, we looked at contracting with the city of Brookfield for fire and EMS support, and those numbers are coming in right around $1 million every year. So our current budget right now, I want to say, is about $300,000 for fire, I'm guessing, and about $260,000 for operational costs of EMS. I think I'm in the ballpark for that. That doesn't include our capital costs. Capital's usually spread out over like 8 to 10 years for a fire truck or an ambulance, and a fire truck can be $800,000 all by itself. So you're in a situation where the group is aging out. I'm one of the babies when I was in it, So they're all getting into be in their 60s and 70s, the core people, with a smattering of younger folks that come in on a case-by-case basis if they're around, home from school and that sort of thing. And it is higher qualifications. I mean, when we all started out and we weren't paid on call, we were all EMT basics. And in 2000, we decided to jump into a paramedic service. And that's a huge amount of educational add-on and maintenance. It's a 2-semester course to come in and then volunteer as a paid on-call person. So when you start to look at these costs, this is 8-10 years ago with the city of Brookfield, what it's going to cost, you go back to them and start looking at it and saying, hey, what will it cost us now? And we're kind of in a situation where they're considering capital costs, and we start to lose our autonomy because we're paying them. And then you can't go and compare costs to Racine. That's a really bad response time. So after a while, you're kind of caught in between here where you can't maintain your autonomy because you're answering to some other fee, some other governmental body. And that's what I'm trying to stay away from. It's tough. I don't have an easy solution to it. But it is a slow train coming, and I think we're going to have some real budget problems down the road in that area. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, all good points there, Chief. I mean, I do think the bedrooms will help for the short term. We're trying to do a lot of things to just patch it along the way. If you look at the 5-year cap, there's other emergency service vehicles in the 5-year cap, so it's not just a staffing thing. It's vehicles and other equipment as well. And the last thing we want to try and do, or we should want to do, is lose our services or reduce our services. So that's where we need to start get creative. I would really not want to be part of somebody else's system. And so we need to find other creative solutions. And I also don't think that we'd always want to go to a referendum to add this. It could be, if you're going to go from 600 to a million, and that just escalates year in, year out, that's something you're going to have to do on an annual basis. So this is where, looking at how do you get additional revenue and making sure that revenue goes to the right places is really important. And that's where you tie these things together, like municipal water and other increase in property values and property taxes from commercial businesses can help us offset some of these increasing costs. Most people don't realize, but commercial properties in the village pay under 10% of our total property tax. Most communities, it's in the 40s or near 50. And for us, that's really problematic because these places can't be redeveloped. The value of them is low. And so adding water actually helps fix some of these other problems, or gives us more options. I think it needs to be studied with different places of how do we become more efficient. And we've been lucky with the volunteers. We've had a lot of people want to volunteer, to help. And I think we're going to have to work on trying to maybe volunteer some people. I'm not sure, but I think it's really it's one of these things that we're going to be dealing with sooner than later.
Thank you. John?
In 5 to 10 years, EMS and fire as we know it are going to be defunct. This is not a slow train coming, it's a fast train coming. 3 of the people that run the most calls for us in EMS are over 65 years old. It takes a long time to become a paramedic. It's about 2 years because you have to go to EMT school first, then go to paramedic, and then at that point you're just a green paramedic. What we need, what the lifeblood of EMS and fire services are young people coming in who live here. But there are no real starter homes in Elm Grove. That's a problem. Joining the fire or EMS is a decades-long commitment. The young people we have are a great help, but they often move on. They're home for college, or they go away to college. They become a paramedic. They go and get hired on North Shore. This is going to be a problem. The best option we have, if we're going to go to a full-paid service that we looked at, was Brookfield taking over. Brookfield isn't that interested in doing it. They're going to charge probably more than $1 million, $1.5 million. If we get our own full-time people, it would be about $1.5 million a year. That's going to come out of everybody's budget. Police, library, everybody. We have to do something. We have to get out ahead of this. This is a serious issue, so we're probably going to have to go to a hybrid service where we have some paid people and some volunteers. But eventually, we're going to have to go to a fully paid service. Brookfield, if they take over, all their stations are on Calhoun Road. That's a long response time. So this is a process I'd like to get started with because we need to deal with it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have a response? All right, we will move on to our final question. Elm Grove has been described as a charming place to live, and there has been a push to maintain that charm. Concurrently, there has been a push for increased diversity in Elm Grove. How do you define charm in our village? How will you seek to maintain and improve upon it? And what are your thoughts on increasing diversity? We'll start with Jennifer.
Sure. If you look at charm in the dictionary, a synonym for it is attractiveness, or being attractive. And I believe as a community, we should strive to be a village in which we welcome all, and that all are able to fully access our community resources as well as engage in all our community activities. Diversity and inclusiveness inspires growth. And therefore, we should welcome all and then include, value, and trust each other because together we're stronger and we're a better community. I would also advocate for greater diversity on the village committees and commissions. And speaking with village residents, many feel their voices aren't being heard or represented by our current village leadership. Forcing volunteer residents off of committees when they bring in differing points of views, which has happened, doesn't reflect a culture that welcomes diverse people and their opinions.
Jim Gage?
I've spoken already tonight about keeping Elm Grove autonomous and moving forward and keeping Elm Grove a good special place to live, and part of that is because of our diversity. My two sons are both Korean, never had an issue in the school system, never had an issue with any of the other kids or people growing up in the Elm Grove area. I think the things that differences of opinion, differences in who we are as people make us stronger. I am a little bit concerned to hear that people were forced off of a committee that's news to me. I've been involved with the police department for 36 years. I know that the president has the ability to assign people to committees and remove them at will, but I'd hate to think that it was because of any kind of diversity issue. We're here to kind of work together, and after April 5th, I'll be either a trustee or I'll be helping out or asking to be on a committee or do something in public service to continue to move the village forward in the right direction, and one that people generally will have the consensus that we're moving in the right direction. I'm not, nor can anyone, make everybody happy. It just isn't going to happen. I spent an entire career going to homes and going to places to try and bring consensus and harmony to a home or a business or whatever. So, it's just, you're just not going to get in a position of leadership and make every person happy. But hopefully, when the re-elections come around and when we have an opportunity to talk to the public, people will have a closer understanding, and our diverse opinions or the way that we are different and us as individuals can come together to make the community a better place.
Thank you. Patrick?
So I think charm is kind of more of a feeling, and that's even for me being a landscape architect and being asked to make things charming. And it's that feeling when you turn down your road or you pull into Elm Grove and you see the cave road with the big trees and you see the family playing in the park and you come out here for Oktoberfest and all the other great things that make Elm Grove just awesome. And for me, that's what charming is. And these things don't just happen. It takes people. And when we work on projects, that's what we're working on. We're working on that synergy of programming, design, elements, landscape, architecture, to help bring in that feeling. And that's what makes places charming. It's the feeling. You feel at home. You feel like you love this place. And that's what we all need to work on, making sure we continue to do. And I think from the diversity standpoint, we need to continue to always be welcoming. I've not heard of anyone being kicked off of a committee. It hasn't happened on any committees I chair, and if it did, that's really awful. And we need to be accepting of different people's opinions. I mean, I've been on this board with lots of different people over the years and lots of different opinions. And I would tell you that's what makes a good board, is a variety of different opinions, people challenging you, people challenging each opinion. That's how you may never get to a consensus, but you're going to get to a good solution. And I think that's what really we need to continue on. And I think with our ability to be welcoming to all, as our downtown continues to grow and become, maybe grow isn't the right word, but to transform, that's where you have these opportunities for other types of businesses and things that come in that attract other people who may not just all live here. And I think that's what makes places really fantastic. When you go to places, in Manhattan or other major cities, and there's a diversity of just places and restaurants, that's what makes places just fantastic. In my business, we spend a lot of time trying to make that part of these projects. We try to help get you there. And so that's why I think, Elm Grove, growing up in Cedarburg, which a lot of people say was charming, I have that same feeling and, just affection for this place.
Thank you. John?
I think diversity is important, and I think everybody in Elm Grove is very welcoming to everybody that I've always seen. I think the things that make it charming are, as Pat said, it's the volunteers. It's the Junior Guild putting on the Memorial Day Parade. It's 4th of July in the Village Park with everybody out on their blankets watching the fireworks and then walking home. This is a town that relies so heavily on volunteers because everybody is willing to help with the village and help each other out. As far as diversity, I want to see some diversity downtown. I want to really make sure that we don't get some generic development that looks just the same as everywhere else in the state. We have a beautiful downtown now, but it's getting old. The buildings were old when I was a kid. So we are going to need to improve and keep it charming. I think it's important that we do have a master plan, because a master plan will prevent haphazard development and having a battle over every single building that goes up. There are some really good plans out there. There are currently 3 alternatives on the master plan on the website. I think those could be tweaked and improved. I'd love to see outdoor seating, a little village square. I'd like to see a walking path, maybe not the asphalt kind that we have everywhere else, but some type of thing along the river connecting the village park with downtown. A farmer's market would be a great thing, and when we redevelop the downtown, all these things will be possible. And I hope we continue the way that we've been going since I was a child here. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Koleski?
Thank you. I moved to Elm Grove because of its quiet charm and high level of services offered, including all the municipal features that exist. Like I said previously, I enjoy the village park, and you can see us biking there and to other shopping locations throughout the village supporting local businesses. We enjoy also walking the winding streets of the village and connecting with our neighbors. Additionally, when my grown children visit Elm Grove from New York City and Washington, D.C., they marvel, absolutely marvel, at the quiet charm and easy access to the park and all the features and benefits that Elm Grove has to offer. You know, I recognize that development and change are important. However, I don't see that accomplished by the large apartment complex. I've suggested that an important component to expand within the village is housing that will provide our residents the option to transition from single-family home ownership to a side-by-side or some other option to ease their need to continue to be a homeowner and no longer worry about home maintenance, shoveling snow, cutting grass, and other activities that come with it. I cannot see a 3 to 4 story apartment structure with a basement parking lot and to need to walk to an elevator carrying your groceries or other purchases to get to your floor as a great option. You know, I always echoing some of the other the members on the forum. You know, to promote good, solid dialogue, you need to respect each other's opinions. You need to engage with them, and you need to understand where they're coming from. That's diverse opinions. That's the ability to continue to build better solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have a response to that question?
I guess I'll just go on record real quick and say that the self-storage plan that was out there floating around for Reinders, I don't consider that charming. So if you're in favor of that, you might not.
What
want to
is
vote.
charming and what is
Yeah,
not
right.
charming?
Let me just add one thing. One thing that came out of the downtown master plan survey was that a lot of people wanted more diversity in housing so that they could actually continue, they could spend their whole life in Elm Grove if they chose to. And, you know, that was where the downtown plan was trying to get to, some options for people that have different types of housing throughout their lifetime.
Thank you.
Can I
Any
just
other-
add one more
Yep.
comment? You know, I've been going door to door too, and I probably, like Jim, have called on hundreds and hundreds of residents, and they really do want a variety of housing. But one of the things that they really want is condos. People in Elm Grove still want ownership options. There are some people that want apartments. They want, you know, when everything's said and done, they want it to be really easy for their kids. And so I think that we need a variety. But 237 apartments is just too much. That's not what this community is looking for.
Thank you. Any other responses? Okay. Well, that concludes our questions. Next, we will go to closing statements from each of the candidates. You'll have 2 minutes to make your closing statement. But before we start with that, I just want to go over some logistics for voting. Absentee ballots, the deadline for an absentee ballot was today, so if you don't already have one, you will need to vote in person. Early voting can be done here in Village Hall tomorrow, Friday, April 1st, between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. The polls will be open Tuesday from 7 a.m. through 8 p.m. All residents of Elm Grove vote in the lower level of our library. Same-day registration is available with proof of residency for both early voting and voting on Tuesday, and a photo ID is required to vote. So with that, we will start with the candidates' closing statements. Again, you have 2 minutes, and we'll start with Jim Gage.
Okay. First of all, I want to say thank you again to the Junior Guild and Monica for moderating tonight. And I just, you know, I really have been privileged in my career here and growing up in this village. And I look forward to serving in whatever capacity down the road. I know there's been a lot of issues on this vote, and I've tried to be as clear as I can be with where I sit on some of these issues. And I also want to let you know that I'm not looking at any one particular issue as to why I ran. I've been involved in the budget, and I've been involved in this village for a long time, watched projects come and go. And I do feel like I have the ability to give some perspective to some of the things that have been going on. And I look forward to serving in the future, and if I'm not successful, I look forward to supporting any one of the trustees and a committee level or in some other method through volunteerism, because I got a lot of time on my hands now. So I appreciate everyone's involvement, and thank you for coming out. It shows that this is why we have such a good village and great people. So thank you.
So it's been one of my greatest privileges to help represent the village for the last 12 years on the Public Works and 8 years as a trustee. And I've really learned a lot and met a lot of great people, hundreds and hundreds of people over the years, and especially this last year. And, you know, I really just love this place, and my goal is always to do what's in the best interest of everybody and listen and seek to understand and help move the village forward. So, you know, why vote for me? You know, I'm a small business owner with 10 offices throughout North America here, you know, with over 300 people, and we deal with a lot of complex financial problems on a daily basis. So it takes creativity. My background is in landscape architecture and planning for the last 27 years has really taught me that best decisions are made with a variety of opinions, and the decisions need to be made for all of the citizens of Elm Grove. And so it takes real experience and real professional expertise. We've accomplished so many great things in the last 12 years of mine on the Public Works Committee with pathways, roadways, bridges, plans for the future, downtown master plans, creek daylighting. So I'm really hopeful to see all those things move forward. I have 3 children here at Tonawanda who have been very quiet here today, so thank you. So it takes patience. And I share the same vision with so many of you, to keep Elm Grove this fantastic place that has this charm, that when we come home we have this great smile. So if you're looking for a candidate with the creativity, experience, professional expertise, who's financially conservative, always willing to listen and understand, then please vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Thank you. I believe in seeking innovative solutions as a trustee, not simply sitting back and picking from the options that are presented to us. I believe as a trustee you have to do your homework on an issue and dig deep so you can ask the critical questions on issues that come before us. It is not enough to be a passive observer and go with the majority. It is not enough to simply follow the recommendations of a consultant and think that is enough. We need to question, we need to winnow and sift, and we need to do the due diligence to find the right and best solution for all the residents. I believe my past experience as president of the Wisconsin Emergency Medical Association and 10 years as a board member uniquely qualify me to help guide us through the massive change that is coming to our village emergency medical services and our fire department. This change is coming soon, and we need to plan and manage the change, not react once it is here. This transformation is going to be difficult, and we need to move past the division and acrimony that has been too prevalent in these recent discussions. That being said, I have made very clear I oppose the personal attacks on any of the sitting trustees or on any of the residents who come here to speak, or on any of the residents who take a stand by forming interest groups to promote their vision for the village. The divisive issues we are currently dealing with are going to be resolved. And after all is said and done, we are still going to be neighbors. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure our conversation does not become so bitter that we aren't able to move forward and work together on the big issues that are coming and we are going to confront in the future. Divisiveness does not move us forward. Taking into consideration the viewpoints of all the residents and having faith in each other will. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Koleski?
I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight, as well as their patience listening on Zoom to the stream of this forum. Over the past 2+ weeks, I've knocked on a lot of doors. I truly enjoyed hearing input on municipal water, the referendum, the Mandel project, TIF financing, I learned a lot there, leaf collection, stormwater runoff, and the associated flooding impacts. I was also impressed with how well informed our residents are on the issue facing the village. To summarize my points tonight, I will be voting yes on the referendum, as I believe this incorporates a business best practice of checks and balances with any organization. My pledge to you is always to listen to your concerns and do my best to engage in an open, constructive dialogue with you. I want us to mutually understand the why. Why are we doing this on every decision impacting our community? We may not always agree. However, we will transparently engage in a discussion and understand each other's positions. I am not in favor of the magnitude of the TIF financing approved to support the Mandel project or the scope of and size of the project. I strongly believe that the project to bring municipal water to the village is separate from the apartment and residential development. The two projects should stand on their own and be able to justify the investment that we're making in these projects. The process of moving a large piece of the municipal water scope to Mandel has cost the village $650,000 in delayed benefits. And it's really a blatant action to circumvent the judge's ruling. I appreciate everyone's attention tonight, and I'd like to conclude with, as a CPA and leader of cross-functional teams, from budgets to training to people development to career development, cost reduction, and annual budgets, I believe I have the experience, capability, and time to devote to be able to help the village move forward. Please vote Jim Koleski on Tuesday. Appreciate your help.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Thank you. I want to once again thank Monica, Sarah, and the entire Junior Guild for this opportunity. Again, thank you all for attending. I just really kind of want to reiterate who I am and what I'm about. You've heard a lot of different things. I think it's easy to kind of forget maybe where people stand. But I moved here 35 years ago and I haven't looked back once. It's the best decision that we ever made. I believe in this village. I love the residents. I love the fact that people are so invested in our community. They give their time to the schools. They give their time on various committees. They're in neighborhood groups. They're in church groups. People are really connected here. That is very, very unique. I think to keep that connectedness, we really need to engage with one another, and we really need to value each other's opinion. There's a lot of stuff that's been going on this last year with this development, and really we've become pretty polarized with everything. And that's really a shame, because we are a wonderful community. We are a community that really enjoys one another. Again, I just want to let everyone know that I do support bringing municipal water into downtown. I think it's essential to spur growth. I am pro-pathway. I think that we need to make sure our children are safe with all the development. I'm fiscally responsible, and therefore I will vote yes on the referendum. When elected, I promise you, the residents, that I will ask critical questions and listen to all parties when making decisions. I will be open-minded and willing to collaborate to find answers to the challenges Elm Grove faces. More importantly, you need to know that I am committed to you, the residents of Elm Grove, first, followed closely by village businesses. I promise to work hard on your behalf. So in closing, I respectfully ask you to vote for me, Jennifer Stuckert, for Village Trustee.
Thank you. That concludes tonight's forum. I would just like to thank first the Junior Guild for supporting tonight's forum, the village for helping us set up tonight, for helping us with the AV so that tonight's forum could be streamed. and available on the Elm Grove Junior Guild's website after tonight for others to view. Thank you to all the residents who submitted questions ahead of the forum, and to the residents who were here today to listen to the forum. And then, of course, thank you to our candidates. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for your prior service to our village. 3 of you will be village trustees after Tuesday's election. But I hope and I'm confident that all of you will continue to serve the village in some ways. So thank you for your time. And with that, we will all vote.
Thank you.